I guess that's my cue to start. All right, hi everybody, it's good to be here. And welcome to our three panelists who I will briefly introduce, and then I'll start with the interrogation. So firstly, the theme for today is to talk about independent travel. So I think a lot of us, I've had a lot of women come up to me as well, asking me like, how do I travel alone, and I'm scared to, and all these kind of things, which I think these are excellent. It's an excellent panel to sort of kick down all those fears, hopefully. So the first, of course, Dr. Catheryn has already spoken early on, so I won't introduce her too much. Kelly here has traveled quite a bit to 70 countries, and she has done quite a number of businesses as well. She started the first guides just for women. She's got her own also conference on women in travel. And she's just started a tourism company that specializes women professionals. And then we have Chrys, who's a digital nomad, who left her job 2 years ago to do what we all want to do, which is work and travel. So I look forward to hearing more about that. So yeah, I'll start with my question. Maybe Dr. Catheryn, I'm quite interested to know a little bit more about what are the trends that you have seen with women in travel, because you've done quite a bit of research. So maybe just a very quick overview in the last 10 to 20 years.
Okay, I've just sent Travel Talk Mag in Australia an updated trend of what's been happening in the last 2 years. And one of the things that we've noticed is the uprising trend of women traveling solo, actually. So worldwide population, I think there's don't quote me on these statistics, but I think it's somewhere around 74% globally, and in Australia, 79%. But this is the surprising thing. In Asia, where people think that Asian women are a bit more subdued, you're not very far behind. No, sorry. In Australia, we're 81%, and in Asia, we're 79%. So, yeah. So that's a surprising trend, Asian-wise.
So why do you think this trend is improving? Is it because we are more financially secure? Are we getting more confident in ourselves?
Yes. So economically, yes, that's a factor, but there's so many different factors as well. So for example, platforms like this is empowering women travel. There's a lot more publications on women and travel, and that's encouraging women to do such things. And then you have social media, you guys tweet about this, and people who see, this Facebook is a social pressure. I want to go where she's just come home from, and I can do what she does, and that's so exciting. So that's a huge influencing factor too.
So Kelly, I would imagine that your guides have been helping some women do this as well. So I'm quite curious to know is that a lot of us actually here today are talking about gender equality, about that more women are empowered. So why do you feel that still in this day and age that a guide for women is really important, and has that really helped women to travel more?
Sure, yeah. I've kind of made it my life's mission to help as many women as possible to feel empowered and inspired enough to get out and go see the world. Because for me, it's changed everything. It's really shown me how strong and capable I am. But 7 years ago when I started Go Girl Guides, there were no one doing guidebooks specific to women. Lonely Planet would give you maybe five paragraphs on where to buy tampons, but not really. So there was really nothing, and I definitely noticed a void in the market, and we're still the first and only series of travel guidebooks specific to women. So our books focus on women's health and safety in different countries, but they also are composed of a lot of content that you would find anywhere else, things to do, things to see. And I thought what was really interesting in your talk just now was about fear-mongering, and that's something that I'm definitely conscious of. I just actually did an interview with Culture Trip last week, and they said, well, where would you tell women not to go? And I was like, I really don't want to tell women not to go anywhere, because any place can be safe, if you take precautions and you're smart, just like I live in New York City. I have to be careful even there. So I think anywhere you go, you have to have a degree of awareness.
So do you think it's a mental perception, or is it a cultural perception? And maybe both of you can sort of share and how do you overcome both the cultural and mental perception?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, I think it's a mental perception. I think a lot of people have an idea that travel is impossible, that it's very expensive, that it's unattainable, that it's for other people. And I think culturally there are certainly issues when it comes to women stepping out and doing something different, maybe that their parents didn't do, that their grandparents didn't do. And so I think there are a lot of different things in play there.
Yeah, because what I always find surprising is that people think that it's Asian women who have this sort of fear of traveling, which I don't agree with, being Asian myself. But just for your part of the world, what is the hesitation still, though? For you come from the States.
For Western women, I think mostly Western women are just afraid to get out of the norm of working a 9-to-5, having 2.5 kids, and a white picket fence house. And I think that this sort of alternative lifestyle of traveling and seeing the world feels like a luxury that isn't for them quite yet. And so, the more we see women getting out there, doing amazing things, having amazing adventures, the more they feel like, hey, I could do that too. And that's awesome. That's what my whole goal is.
Yeah, but I think it's also this ethics of care and that guilt that I talked about, that social expectations. So these, even for Western women, have this ethics of care, right? So when you have little children, you will always think that I don't travel until the kids are a bit older. Or if I do travel, then it's only for a night. And they often have to find excuses. So like, okay, I'm going to a church conference. I'm going to I'm going to do something that they always have to justify with a reason, often a professional one. And men don't have to do this.
Okay, I'm going to go to Chrys and to understand first, conceptually, what is a digital nomad? And because when I heard the word digital nomad, the first vision that comes to my head is Matrix, camels. And I was like, no, that can't be right. So maybe you can share, then I'll ask you a little bit more questions about that.
That sounds accurate.
Yeah, I'm always on a camel. That's how I got here, actually. It's a common question I always get. And a digital nomad is basically someone who combines their career with their bucket list of traveling. So I've always loved traveling. And I would do like a 1-year trip away, and I'll come back, rejoin advertising, quit advertising, travel for 1 year, come back, and eventually I just realized that why am I doing this back and forth when I really hate working advertising, and I just want to travel for as long as I can, and I just realized there's this term called digital nomads, and I'm like, oh my god, this is the best way to travel. I never have to come home if I don't want to. Of course, my mom is not too happy about that, but that's a whole different story, yeah. So basically, a digital nomad works online like I do. So just yesterday, I was working out from the pool site here in the hotel. This morning, I worked out of the breakfast buffet. I just work from wherever I can find internet, and and I can travel, and it sustains me, and I'm basically just working and getting to see the world while I do it.
And are there any myths around being a digital nomad that you hear, the common things that people say?
Yeah, the biggest myth is that I'm on vacation all the time. So my mom always tells me, when are you coming home? Aren't you sick and tired of just traveling so much? Or my friends are like, how do you support yourself? Like, you're just, I see you posting pictures of Costa Rica. Like, do you ever have to work? And I'm like, yeah, actually I work a lot more than you guys do. The myth is that, we are just moving from one place to the next, to the next, to the next. But actually most of us, or at least the people that I know of who are digital nomads, we work more right now than we used to. One of the reasons is because we don't have a clock-in, clock-out system anymore. So I wake up and I'm like, oh, awesome, let's start working. The next thing I know is dinner time, because I'm not accountable to anyone. And also, if I don't work, I don't get paid, and then I can't travel. So actually, most of us work a lot, more than we travel, so to speak. Yeah.
And would you say that traveling is limited for single women? So I get that question a lot. It's like, so you're single, it's easier for you. I'm like, yeah, I have plants though, so I still have to take care of plants. But no, is it limited to single women? Is it also limited to women who work who don't work 9 to 5? And so what are your views on that, and how would women, especially married women or women with partners and children, overcome some of these challenges? I think, Catheryn, you spoke a little bit about that, but maybe we could hear a little bit more from all three perspectives, because you've got all three different kind of backgrounds.
I'll go first. So, as a single woman, of course, it's much easier for me to pack up my bags, leave Singapore, and live abroad. I don't have the expectations that come with being a mother, or having kids to take care of, having a home mortgage to pay off, which is very expensive in Singapore, or a car. So definitely the expectations that I have are much more different from my friends who are married and have kids. But it's not impossible. I've met digital nomad families who travel as a family, and they're able to sustain their living, and their kids are amazing because they grow up in different cultures. They speak more than one language, or one or two languages, and they just absorb so much from the world, and they're just able to travel around. So it is not impossible. It's just a different lifestyle that you might be accustomed to.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, when it comes to living this sort of lifestyle, because I'm traveling 2 to 3 weeks out of the month every month, so I'm hardly ever in New York, which is ridiculous because I pay New York rent. But you sort of have to either find a partner who loves to travel as much as you do, or find a travel partner, or find a partner who doesn't like to travel at all. Right? Those are like the two extremes. So my partner, I've been with for many years, hates to travel. So he stays home. He's happy to stay home, take care of the dog while I go out on the we So I don't know how that worked out in my life, but somehow it does. But like I said, we also know several families who live this sort of lifestyle and can make it work. And then there's always the dream that, the kind of eat, pray, love dream that you're going to go out and find someone and he'll be like handsome sitting in a bar in Spain waiting for you, and you're like, oh. And
It does happen once in a while.
Yeah, it does happen. Yeah, it does happen. But we shouldn't travel just for that. We should be traveling for ourselves.
I'm speaking on behalf of women who have had children, and it can be done. So my children have had their passports. I don't know why this always happens. Well, actually, I know why it always happens. But all of my 3 kids, we always have to scramble getting them passport photos the minute they're born. So it's always trying to get the eyes open. Babies don't open their eyes very much. And then trying to look at the camera. We always struggle with all these 3 kids, because every time, the moment they're born, we have to get their passport because we're going somewhere. So when my son was born, we were going somewhere. When my daughter was born, the minute she was born, we had to get our American visa because we were going to live in Florida for 7 months. The moment that my last son was born, we were going to move to Australia. So, but the thing is this, when you travel with your family, it's different. It's not so much about. So there's a lot more people to think about. So now, for example, when I go we're thinking about spending 6 months in Granada in Spain. And the first thing I have to do is look for schools, right? Look for schools where the kids can go to so that I can have my time. But again, it's the partner. What will your partner do? I'm in a very privileged position because my husband works from home and he has a freelance business. So he can, like Chrys, can be stationed anywhere. So he's been doing a lot of traveling with me, but sometimes he says, I don't want to go, I'm happy for you to go, and I'm happy to be with the kids. I live in Australia now, where I don't have sisters there, I don't have friends there. We just settled into Australia not long ago, and I don't have a mom, I don't have in-laws, so I don't have no help. That's why I have to make the 28 dinners. It can be done. Anything can be done.
And one of the challenges I think for traveling is how we manage our finances. That's the more practical side, apart from the safety, right? So that's something that somebody always asks me is, how do I afford travel? And especially for somebody like me, we are all in different age groups here, which is good, which means that there's no limitation in terms of age, but how do you manage your finances? Because at the age of 20, 30 or 40, because we all have, and even for me, I used to be able to do backpacking. No, not anymore. So I tend to go for a bit more luxurious, but I manage my finances accordingly. And as a digital nomad, how do you do that? What kind of financial kind of security do you have? And for both of you, you have a partner but no children, you have children. Any advice on that?
For me right now, I always believe in having different income streams, especially as a digital nomad. I'm a freelancer. Honestly, it's the same strategy you would have if you have a full-time job in Malaysia or whatever, you want to have savings, you want to have enough to pay your rent, you want to have enough to cover your daily expenses. But for me, I believe in having a diversified income stream. So I have women digital nomads that bring in regular income from advertisers, from affiliate sales. I am a freelance marketer and social media marketer, so I have that. In the midst of starting a boutique agency with my business partner for marketing and all that stuff, so that's going to bring additional. I have investments as well. So honestly, it's the same. I used to be when I was much younger. I'm almost 30, by the way. I look very young, but turning 30 in a few months. When I was younger, I used to backpack. And I started a travel blog, not a real travel blog, but it's called Cheapskate Chronicles. Because I was so cheapskate, I wouldn't dumpster dive, but I wanted to. And I tried hitchhiking, but no one picked me up. Maybe because I don't look so hot or something. No one picked me up. So I just stood there, my son eventually had to buy a bus ticket, but but during that time, it was just like eating out my savings, and there wasn't any financial planning, so to speak. Yeah, so being a digital nomad, for me, is that safety net right now that pays for my travels, yeah.
Well, I run 3 companies, so I think when I started in this industry 7 years ago, I had no idea that this was an industry. So I've really had to kind of define my own path in it, and I've been very fortunate to be starting it at the right time, back when travel blogging was sort of just on the rise, and there was a community of maybe 100 or so travel bloggers. And that's when I started Go Girl Guides, and so I make money from publishing and selling guidebooks. I've got a couple for sale. And I run tours on the side, and I'm also a travel writer, so I'm constantly working. I'm a hustler, true and true. Like, you have to make it work, right? If this is your dream, if this is what you want, you have to figure out a way to make that happen. Whether it's writing, it's photography, it's speaking, it is, there's lots of different forms in which you can make money and travel the world. You just have to find what works best for you.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's hard to say which strategy works best money-wise, and it really depends on how you want to travel, what level of luxury you want to have, yeah. And for me, even though I don't have to have luxury, but I still don't want to backpack, right? And I still want to go back to a house, whatever that house might be. And so for me, I took the long road. Actually, I decided a long time ago, and I'm always I'm a bit what was that word? A bit of a control freak. I want to try and control as many situations as I can possible, and I strategize. So for me, it was a long-term planning. I knew that I always wanted to travel, and I knew that I didn't want to do backpacking or hitchhiking or anything of that sort. I don't want to stay in hostels. But so what I did was I decided to do a PhD, right? And because I saw the life of an academic that, for every 3 years you work, you get 6 months sabbatical. And you can decide where you want to go on that sabbatical, right? So it's a great job. So that was my financial plan.
Yeah. I think that there's sort of a misperception a lot of times that you have to go on these epic long adventures and sell everything you own, and you're not really traveling unless you're in a hostel and you don't own anything, you don't have a car, and that's not reality for a lot of people. And that's okay. You can work a job, a standard Monday through Friday job, and still find time to travel. You can still find a budget to travel. It's all about setting your priorities and your expectations. Where do you want to go, and how do you want to do it? You can do whatever you want. So I think that that's really important too. There's lots of different ways to see the world, and there's no one right or wrong way. So I just wanted to say that really quickly to discourage, if anyone's thinking she's a blogger and she's always traveling, that's my path, but that's maybe not yours, and we can still meet on the road and have a great time.
And Chrys, one of the things that I wanted to ask, which some women have asked me as well, and I've actually gone through that, is that especially when I was constantly traveling, you're practically living out of your bag, basically. Even nowadays, I still do it. And there's a certain detachment that you have to your home base. I don't know whether you've experienced that and whether you have an opinion about that. What is it, that nowadays that allows you to sort of overcome this detachment? Because that's what I found. When I came back now, I was like, oh my God, everybody's not less travel and not thinking the same way I do. How do I personally then overcome that? Because there are those other things. As you're experiencing wonderful things, there's also that personal journey that you also have when you come back. Dissociation with people, maybe with family not understanding you. So any thoughts and any ways of overcoming that? These are for the more experienced traveler.
I mean, first things first is I don't travel very fast. So I'm actually based out of Mexico City right now. And how I like to travel is if I really like a city, I'll stay there for at least 6 months. If I don't really like a city, I'll stay there for at least 1 month. And because I'm based out of Mexico City for this year, I have already established a group of friends, Mexican friends, that I'll hang out with, kind of created my own community there, so I don't feel so lonely. It's kind of like being in Singapore, but also because I really wanted to get out of Singapore. So honestly,
as a Malaysian, I won't say anything about that.
I know this is being recorded. My mom's gonna watch it later, but I love you, Mom. But it's always difficult because coming from an Asian family and you're the daughter and your family wants you to be home and like this year during Chinese New Year, my mom was like, "It's Chinese New Year, you're not coming home." Well, firstly, Mom, it's 32 hours to fly home. Not coming home just for Chinese New Year. That was ridiculous. And it's really expensive. But my mom kind of expects me to, why can't you just be like your friends and, stay at home and live with us and, why must you travel so much? Or just travel to Bangkok, come back, Why must go all the way to so far away and I don't ever get to see you for so many, years and then... So it's difficult. And I miss my family and I missed out on a lot of things. Like last year alone, 3 of my friends got married. In fact, I have a group of best friends. I missed all their weddings. And they're like, "I told you 1 year in advance." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's not enough." So I missed out all their weddings and I missed out on the birth of one of their kids. So it's been tough being away from home for sure, yeah.
It's funny because I'm sort of on the other end of the spectrum, right? I travel quickly. I'm not traveling slowly. Like, I flew 22 hours to come here. I'm flying 22 hours back. I'm in New York for 24 hours, and then I'm going to Uzbekistan. So I'm, like, constantly on the road. And so I had to really sort of come to terms with the fact that my outfits are always not going to be perfect, right? I had to kind of, like, detach myself from that materialistic kind of mentality of, and I wish that I had on other clothes right now. I have a really cute bracelet at home, but I didn't bring it. But you do have to kind of like let that stuff go. I travel with maybe 6 to 8 outfits. I travel only with a carry-on because I realized that even on a long trip, I don't need more than that. So I was just traveling for the last 4.5 months through the Himalayan area, and I only brought a carry-on, and I even felt like I had too much stuff then. So I have like a pretty essential packing list. It's like 1 necklace that's really valuable, a pair of boots, a pair of shoes that I can walk or run in, some flats, some pants, some leggings. It's a pretty simple list, but I don't need much more than that. And I think that traveling as much as I do, I sort of had to come to terms with that and give up the attachment that I have to pretty sparkly things. But it's okay, because what do I get in return? I get to come to Malaysia and eat amazing street food, and like, who cares what I'm wearing, right? It's not about that. So it's about seeing the world, and it's a give and take.
And Catheryn, like, how do you maintain? So you're away for 1 month. How did you maintain that, like, connection to your children or to your family?
So when I said this to my boy, I said, "I'm gonna miss you. Mommy's gonna go away for a whole month, right?" And he looked at me and said, "But we have Skype, right? It's not like you're dying or anything." Exactly, in that tone of voice, right? And I don't even Skype that very often. I have friends who travel and they would Skype their children every single day. I've come out from home. I left home on Sunday, and today it's, what, Tuesday? I haven't seen my children on Skype at all. Right? So, and people say to me, you're traveling without your kids? You know, in that, like, wide-eyed look. And it's like, you haven't talked to your kids? And I'm like, should I be talking to my kids? So I don't know. I just do what I feel is right. I don't feel guilt. I know I love my children. I know they love me. And, you know, when I go back, I'm a better mother. I spend 100% of whatever time I have with them, for them. So I don't feel guilty. But I'm in between Chrys and Kelly. Like, I don't travel that slowly because I don't have the luxury of that because of my 3 kids, but I don't travel as quickly either. So I try to balance. So we try to go away for 6 months at a time when we can. That's the longest that we can manage. But in March next year, we are going to Japan, the whole family. And I'm going to be stationed at Wakayama University, and we'll be there for a whole month. And the kids will be there and hopefully soak up the atmosphere. So for us, whenever we get to a destination, for the last time, for example, when we were in Florida, we didn't take anything with us. We only had, between the 4 of us, 2 adults, 2 kids, we only took things that was allowable on the airline luggage. We didn't exceed the luggage limit, and that was for 7 months. But when we got to the States, we just went to thrift shops and just buy whatever we needed from thrift shops, right? So it's so easy these days. And it's great because you don't have burden, because if you are going away for 6 months, what do you do with your house? You rent it out. And when you rent it out, you sell everything as much as possible. So we don't have a lot of stuff. So as a family, I think we travel pretty lightly.
So I want to talk, so I've talked a little bit about challenges of finances, about, you know, being linked to family. What about, so I don't know whether you have this experience, but at least from your own travels, about, say, things like dietary restrictions. Do you find that that's you know, a challenge that you face as well? And also maybe like when you're sick, what do you do when you're sick when you're traveling? Any advice on that and how women can overcome those 2 challenges?
Yeah, as someone who got dysentery probably 4 times in the last 5 months, I have some experience in that area. And unfortunately, it's just a part of traveling. I lost 10 pounds and then I stepped foot in Belgium and I gained 15 back. So, you know, I try to keep myself to some kind of a schedule, especially when it comes to food. So there's a lot of elements that I can't control in my daily life on the road, but I can almost always control my breakfast. So I'll have like a nice solid breakfast I can start off with. That way, if I'm out exploring, I don't get to the point of exhaustion and hanger and, you know, at 3:30 where I'm just like, ah! I try to give myself a good base to explore with, and I try to stay away from foods that make me personally feel a little more lethargic, like dairy, but that's, you know, everyone's body is different. So I think it's all about establishing a routine, figuring out what works best for you, and trying to keep some amount of normalcy, even when you're abroad.
So what about you as a digital nomad?
Yeah, because like, I only eat fish and veggies. So I remember being in the Balkans and everything was in Cyrillic and I couldn't understand anything I was reading. And I remember just walking into a bakery in Sarajevo and I was like, oh my gosh, another day, another puff. That's all I can eat, just puffs and puffs and more puffs and more pastries. And I got so sick and tired of it. And I remember that so clearly, like after a month in the Balkans, I just did not want to touch anything that was a pastry ever again in my life. And I mean, that was a couple of years ago, but recently, I mean, when I first moved to Mexico, I was so looking forward to, you know, finally eating burritos and all that. Turns out there are no burritos in Mexico City.
Yeah. There are no burritos.
That is, no, yeah, it's an American invention. Who would have thought that? But it was super difficult to find anything other than chicken or beef or pork on the street. And when I first arrived, I couldn't speak any Spanish at all, like yourself. So I didn't even know the word for cheese or veggies, and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to survive?
Can I try that, saying cheese and veggies?
Yeah, go ahead.
Huevo y verduras.
Huevo is eggs.
Oh,
Queso.
It's okay.
Queso.
You have to go back for another month.
Queso y
It's okay.
verduras.
Yeah. So yeah, it's always tricky when you have some kind of dietary and I can't imagine like halal food is going to be tough to find. Not really. Okay. Yeah, but I mean.
Yeah, I mean on halal food, I just go vegetarian. So I think it's about being as flexible as you can and don't be, if you can't have everything basically.
Yeah.
Some of us of course bring surrounding and stuff. So when I was traveling to the US for 2 months, it was not about halal thing, but I have a great attachment to Milo, so I brought Milo. So it depends on what's your comfort and what makes you hungry and not hungry, right? So I know my diet very well. It's like, when I'm hungry, I need to have Milo, I need to have sugar, whatever that makes you survive and will make you feel a little bit comfortable.
Yeah.
So for me, I just go vegetarian, I just have seafood or
And traveling
bread. Yeah.
with other people too, you have to always be aware of like your hunger level, right? Because like some people are awesome until they're really hungry, and then you're like, oh my god, give this woman an ice cream cone. Like I don't know, like, so you have to. Food really like will change the game when you get to that level where you're just like.
Yeah, and then when you consider kids, and when they eat now, they mean now, right? And they only want cheese sticks. Nothing else. So remember when I said I'm a control freak? So what I do is I usually seek out hotels or apartments that have a little kitchenette. And the first thing I do is I will order food online to have it delivered, or I will go to and seek out the closest supermarket and buy food that I know my kids will want to eat, and I'll stock up. And every time before we go out, I have a little chili bag, a little cooler bag, and I'll prepare all this food and travel. So no matter where we go, anytime they need to eat, out comes the bag or the juices. So we don't have to, it's not that stress of having to look for food outlets. And that's what I did when I was pregnant as well. You can't eat certain things when you're pregnant, so that's what I did as well, yeah.
I think also grocery stores too, hitting a grocery store when you first get into a new place is a great way also of breaking a big bill that you get from an ATM. Because I don't know if you've ever been to a country where cab drivers are like, oh, I don't have change. And you're like, oh, how convenient. I have a $100 bill and this is a $5 ride and you don't have change. So, grocery stores will always be able to break your bills. 7-Elevens will always break your bills. So even if I'm not food shopping or stocking a fridge, I'll buy a little snack or something just so I can get some smaller bills. That's something that I do all the time.
So what about as a digital nomad? So when you're living in these countries for 1 to 6 months, do you stay in your own apartment? Do you rent something long term or?
Yeah, so I always prefer to rent through Airbnbs, or if they have local platforms, I'll rent an apartment. I used to stay in hostels and all that, but oh my gosh, I cannot. I still do that once in a while when I'm on really recently I was in Nicaragua and Costa Rica, and 1 week in Nicaragua, 1 week in Costa Rica, and I was like, I'm traveling by myself. I want to hang out with other people. So I'm like, okay, I'll stay in hostels. And every time I was in a hostel, I'm like, that's the reason why I rent an apartment. Because I get the freedom to, do my own stuff. I don't have to sleep only when everyone else is finally sleeping. So past that thing already.
And I would imagine then you can also buy food as well, right? And then cook, because that's what I do as well.
Yeah, so and I really miss Asian food. Living in Mexico City, it's so hard to find real Asian food that is not chop suey or not some orange lemon chicken. I don't know what that is. So having an apartment allows me to cook my own food. Actually, I cook most of the time. Because the first month I got to Mexico City, I loved the food so much. I actually gained 4 kilos in 1 month. And I was like, oh man, I better get back to CrossFit ASAP. So now I just cook all my food, and once in a while I do go out and eat, yeah.
So we are at the last few minutes. The talk is about how do you overcome challenges on traveling. So maybe Catheryn, if you highlight one key challenge and how you've overcome it yourself, or your advice on how to overcome that. I think you spoke a little bit about guilt and other things perhaps that you want to share.
Yeah, for me as a woman, it's always about that guilt, isn't it? If you're single, you don't feel like you're entitled because you've got parents to look after. If you're married, then you've got your partner. If you've got children, then it's your children or your husband. And if you're, older and retired, you're thinking about, oh, I'm not allowed to do this. I'm supposed to be sharing the workload with my daughter, helping out my daughter, helping out the granddaughter. So it's always that obligation that stops us from traveling, whether that travel is 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month, or 6 months, whatever it is, right? So I think for me, the biggest challenge I see for a lot of women is that guilt, right? So I would like to really encourage you to empower yourself with being friends with this guilt and having this good conversation with this guilt and say, where did you come from? And, you know, can we have a deal about this?
Yeah. I think a lot of the limitations that we place on ourselves, we place on ourselves, you know. We stop ourselves a lot of times from chasing our dreams because we feel like maybe we don't deserve them, or maybe we can't get them, or maybe they're too far. That's crap. You can do whatever you want, and there's no wrong way to do it. And when it comes to traveling, I think a lot of women, our primary concern is safety. So, I mean, I have a couple like hard and fast safety tips that I stand by, which is always avoid the beach at night, anywhere you are in the world. And, you know, be firm with your boundaries. When I first started traveling, I'm obviously from the US, and I didn't want to be seen as a rude American, right? Because that's a thing for us. So I would allow conversations with men to go past the point that I was comfortable because I didn't want to come off rude. And I quickly realized that you just have to be rude sometimes. You just have to say no and get out of that situation. And also, if you're ever in a dicey situation, look to the nearest woman. That's one of my biggest standbys.
The biggest challenge in terms of being a digital nomad is thinking that you can't do it. One of the things that I hear all the time is, oh, you're so lucky you can work online. I can't work online. I don't have any special skills. But the truth is, everyone can find something to do online that will bring them, you know, an income. I will talk more about that on how you can do it in the talk itself. But that's the general challenge and the myth behind it. You can actually find something, you know, that will allow you to travel and work. Even if you don't want to travel, even if you just want to be at home, stay at home mom, you can easily do that.
So I'm going to ask one last question, sorry. And so why, despite all these challenges, because that's the question it's asking, is that do you do it anyway? What is your personal reflection in your journey, very quickly, on why you still do it?
For me, I recently discovered that my astrological sign and my astrology, basically I'm somebody who seeks liberty, and I cannot stay put in one place. I actually discovered that, which only just solidifies how I felt all these years, but I've always wanted to escape. You know, when I was a kid, my mom told me the higher your noodles are, the further away you'll leave home, so don't leave your noodles too high. And I was like, exactly how far is each country? Because I want to know. I want to escape. I was like maybe 10 years old, and I was like, I knew I just had to get out of Singapore. So despite all the challenges of financial, safety, and so on and so forth, I just cannot imagine myself working in a 9-to-5 in Singapore. Yeah.
Kelly?
Why do we do it anyway? Because it's fun, right? It's fun. It's fun to meet new people. It's fun to eat new things. It's fun to experience new cultures. And for me, the biggest reward is that every time I travel, I come back home and I realize that the world is mostly safe and people are mostly good and people will reach out to you and they will help you when you need that. And that is a huge reminder for me of, you know, that the world is a good place despite what's happening politically across our lines. So I think for me, the challenges maybe of finding a bus in China, which is sometimes impossible for me, is a greater reward when I finally get on that bus. So.
For me, there's so many different reasons why I do it anyway. First of all, my personality is that I'm a sensation seeker. So I seek sensations, new sensations all the time, and I can't do that from staying put in one place. But also I've learned so much from a travel in the way that I live life, and my perspective of life and people is constantly changing all the time. And that is such a spiritually empowering thing, you know, that you can look at someone and see them. It's not just a face. And I've learned that from traveling and many other life lessons like that. But you become more tolerant of people. You see the good in people.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, and a round of applause for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're going to have a Q&A session. Thank you very much, ladies. And also don't miss out tomorrow. Kelly will be having her talk as well on how she built a business in travel, as well as Chrys, how she became a digital nomad. And she's also got a workshop tomorrow. Now, we're going to open the floor for anyone in the audience dying to ask them some questions. Anybody? Everyone's so shy.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Anyone with any questions? We have a lady here. Would you please introduce yourself and let us know who you'd like to direct the question to?
Hi, I'm Leonie from Germany. Actually, I'm going back home soon. I have been traveling. I've been in Asia since February. I wanted to. Sorry, I forgot your name. But you said you're yes.
Kelly.
Kelly, sorry. You said you're traveling like all around the world all the time. How do you deal with jet lag or time differences?
Oh, girl. Am I pulling it off right now? Because I don't feel like I am. It's hard, you know. I sort of just have this, like, I know this is going to maybe sound a little masculine and aggressive, but I kind of have this beast mode mentality, right? Of like, yeah, I'm tired, but I'm not tired. Like, I've got to get out and I've got to see things because I have a limited amount of time to do it. So I try, when I have the ability to rest, to allow myself to rest, but I'm also the kind of person who feels guilty laying in bed watching Netflix, right? Like, I feel like I got stuff to do. So I have a hard time with that. I try to take some moments of balance. So like this morning I woke up wide awake at 3 a.m. because it's a 12-hour time difference from JFK. Couldn't sleep. And I was like, all right, what do? Do I work? Do I go to the gym? And then I'm like, that's crazy. I can't go work out at 3 in the morning. What will the hotel security think? So I decided to meditate instead. And after like an hour of like sitting and being calm and taking that time in that space, I was able to fall back asleep a little bit. So I just have to remind myself to slow down in the moments and enjoy it, because it can sometimes feel like I'm going a million miles an hour, you know? And I'm ultimately, what this is all about for me is seeing the world and meeting new people. So for me, I'm okay with giving up a few hours of sleep to do that. I just have to find other ways to make up that space.
Hi, I'm Shindy. I'd like to direct the question to Catheryn. I'm nearly 30, turning 30 already, and I've never taken a long break, like, you know, to go out to overseas and do something. All my life, it has always been find a job, secure a job, you know, and get your monthly paycheck. So I got an opportunity earlier this year to go away and do a work travel thing for 6 months. So my concern is, oh my God, should I do this? But when, you know, people at their 30, they're building their career, you know, I'm already at a place, I should be, you know, securing a house. But here I am, going away, galloping in some other country, plucking apples and whatever it is. So what is your opinion on this? Like, you know?
Oh my God, you should totally do it.
I mean, did you expect her to say stay home?
Yeah, I mean, you can always work, right? After 6 months, you have another 30 more years to work. But you might not get these 6 months again, right? And the things that we regret in life when we lay on our deathbed are not the things that we've done, but things that we haven't done, right? So even if you're turning 40, I'd say do it. I'll do it. But we can have a little more chat after if you like.
Hi, this is for Catheryn as well. I'm Adina, and I have a little kid at home. So aside from guilt, I was just wondering, obviously you find yourself in situations sometimes where you want to do both. I mean, you do want to spend time with your kids. They're not just a chore, right? But you want to do stuff for yourself as well. I mean, what do you do? How do you balance that?
Do you mean in one trip?
Just in general. Sometimes it's on a trip. Sometimes, you know, if you can take a month off, for example, or at least I feel that way. If I could take a month off, I would think, now I finally have more time to spend with him, but this is finally when I have time to spend with myself. So it's not a guilt. I do want to do that, but it's just deciding what do you want to do? Do you find yourself ever in those situations?
Yeah, definitely. So what I do is, so this 1 month is, it doesn't happen, it hasn't happened at all since I've had a baby. So it hasn't happened for 8 years, this 1 month just by myself. So it was sorely needed. And it just happened two months ago, and it ended last month. But most of the time when we do go away, and definitely I know what you mean, you want to have time for yourself, but you also want to see your kids because you want to make memories with them, right? And that's why I've been telling tourism providers that they're not giving us opportunities to do that, right? And our research has shown that when we put our kids in, they have things like kids club, thinking, okay, parents can go and have a good time, be by themselves, but parents have again and again said to us, we don't trust the kids club. Who are these staff members in the kids club? They don't know childcare, they don't have police clearance certificate. So they're trying to provide things on a very quick, shallow, without any research done. They don't know that parents don't want to use this service, and they continually provide kids club, right? So it's not solving the problem. But you know who is doing a good job? Cruise ships are actually doing the best job for parents with kids. So our research has found that cruise ships are one of the leaders in actually catering for parents with kids, in the sense that it's very secure childcare, right? And they have a very organized activities, sometimes even educational, that parents like. But the parents can pop in any time to see the kids and go out with the kids, or have dinner with the kids, or kids go in and you have dinner by yourself. So very flexible, and that's what parents need when they holiday with their children. So based on that research, I actually booked a cruise ship, and it was a great experience, really. Yeah.
And can I just share, as a child of a mother who traveled a lot? So my mother actually, when I was about 3, she went away for 1 year to do her master's. And then after that, she continued to pursue studies away from me in the UK, when there was no WhatsApp, there was no Skype, there was no FaceTime, and I think I turned out pretty all right. And if anything, my mother inspired me a lot to be a stronger woman as well. So sometimes maybe it's your issues, not your child. And what my mom did for me is that she wrote long letters. And those letters are the ones that actually made me feel very attached to her. She brought gifts, so she built a lot of memories despite her being away. And I am who I am because my mother used to travel, and she used to get stuck in all sorts of funny journeys. And it's you also, who you become also really contributes to your child's well-being and growth and confidence as well, because then I became also more independent, which is good for me. Maybe a bit too independent for some, but anyway. But I think I turned out okay. I also traveled a lot, just to share with you. I built my career. I worked in non-profit. Over time, I decided to buy my car and house later, but it happened only in my late 30s, and I'm doing okay. So it's about, I think, good planning as well. So I thought I'd share that a little bit. Yeah,
and also, we always think that, what if we leave our children behind, and the scar or the trauma that they have about their parents going away and banning them. But what we don't have enough conversation of is the other side of the coin. What kind of role model are we setting for our kids when their mother is not supposed to travel, their mother is staying at home, and the fathers get to travel, right? So what role model am I setting for my daughter and for my son, who's going to, and my son's future partner? Presuming he wants a wife.
All right, I think we're going to grab a last few questions. Anyone?
Hi, I have a question for Kelly. Okay, you mentioned just now you have 3 companies, isn't it? Yeah. My situation right now, I have some friends from America. They're traveling around, they're like digital nomad, and one of them makes good money, so it's easy for them to come here in Malaysia, tour Asia, and then get along with the family, and then comes one day and they'll say like, come over to Hawaii, meet my family, and spend time with my sister and all that. But since I'm working from 9 to 5, I'm thinking of wanting to start a company on my own. How did you do that? I mean, how did you balance things, like have from shifting from 9 to 5 jobs and then starting to have companies and all that?
Yeah, in the beginning, you mean?
So that I can spend time, maybe have more money to travel and see them, see the family and all that.
Yeah, totally. So I'm going to be talking a lot about this tomorrow. This is mostly what I'm going to be talking about, dollars and cents and how to make it work. But I think for me, in the beginning when I started everything, I was just working constantly. I had 3 jobs. I had a 9 to 5, I was an editor for a magazine, and then I was working as a hostess on the side, and I was freelancing for another magazine on the side. So it got to the point where I had like maybe 5 hours off a week, which I don't recommend. But if you've got a short-term goal, sometimes you have to just kind of kick it into high gear and do what you have to do to make it to Hawaii or wherever it is. And also, I'm from Hawaii, so I highly recommend that you go and do that. It's a wonderful place, but I think it's just about figuring out, and maybe you don't have to work 3 jobs. Maybe you don't buy coffee for a couple of weeks. When I was first trying to finance my startups, I would do these things called no-spend days, where I would literally try to not spend a cent on anything, which is really difficult, right? Because there's always something. There's like a vending machine at work, or there's always something. But I would try really hard not to spend a single cent. And doing that over and over leads to big savings. So, you just kind of have to cut corners, tell your friends, I'm sorry, I can't go out this week, whatever it is, to create the finances to be able to make that work.
If I can just add to that, because before I left advertising, I actually started a startup in the midst of that. So having a 9 to 5 job really helps you with saving enough money to travel to Hawaii if you want to. But also the fastest way you can earn money is actually through offering freelance services. So if, for example, you are already a marketer, or you are a personal assistant, you can now already start offering virtual assistant services to people. And it's the fastest way to start earning money, because starting a business is really difficult. It takes usually 2 years before you start making profit. So you should start doing freelance services if you can right now.
Okay, and our last question.
Hi, I'm Rebecca, and I'm also in some very small hospitality businesses. But what I'm quite interested in now, because I've just been watching things, travel things go, women have become a very big target market, obviously. But I'm very interested in the differences between the younger traveller and the older women traveller, because I think the needs are quite different. And also the older women traveller, in my age group, for example, where my kids have already grown up and they've gone, I've travelled all the time, but it doesn't matter. That point where your kids have grown up and suddenly there's time, a lot more women become far more independent. And I think the needs are different and the fears are different, and very different to the younger women travelers who right now have no fear in many, many ways. I was just interested to know if, from your points of view, Catheryn and Kelly, all of you, just how you see that going as well, going forward.
I actually think there's a huge void in the market for information for older women who travel. I think a lot of the times it's women in my generation in their late 20s and 30s who are like steamrolling it, and I think there are also a lot of other concerns for older travelers. And I think that right now we're sort of seeing a trend in the industry where we're filling those gaps. So for a long time, you were either a backpacker or you were on Norwegian, where there's more wheelchairs than chairs, right? So there was no in between. It was really stark in contrast. And I'm starting to see the rise of a lot of different women's tour companies who are offering trips to different markets. A lot of them are creating tours without single supplements, which has always been a problem in the women's travel industry. We're penalized for traveling by ourselves. We have to pay more for that. And so I'm starting to see a rise, but there's still a hole there. And so I encourage you to rise up and be the person that creates a site that offers more information or tours or, I think that there's definitely a market there that should be explored.
Yeah, so with our research, we found that women in their 50s and 60s are very highly likely wanting to travel, right? But there are not enough tourism products to cater to this market. But in the last few years, and in my latest book on women and travel, we have a few women who have said, I've set up a business for women in their 50s and 60s for independent travel. And these are the things that we do. But there's a myth around women in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who travel in that they don't want to do very much. They're more, they think that women in 50s, 60s, and 70s just want to, visit gardens and go on cruise ships, right? But research is saying otherwise, that women in their 50s, 60s, and 70s even want to do things like climb mountains, learning new things. For example, even learning about, even if I don't drink wine, I want to learn about the wine culture and how to pair Asian food with wine. So even things like that are educational. It's not super active, but it's empowering, it's educational. So those are the things that there is a gap in the market that we need to cater for. And some tourism businesses are paying attention, but these tourism businesses that are paying attention are not run by men. These are the women who understand women's needs and are saying, hi, you just confirm what I think is out there. And so it's like people like you, Rebecca, who start up these businesses. I think like Nazlin has got her tracking businesses. I think these are great, encouraging for me as a women researcher to see, but those businesses are minorities. The big gap is still catering for women who want to go to park and
although I will say, even in your slides when we were putting up the search results for women travel tips, the number one was Journeywoman, and that's run by a woman named Evelyn Hannon, who's in her 60s. So there certainly are voices who are catering to that market, but we've yet to see kind of how the tourism industry is going to follow suit.
Thank you very much, ladies. Let's give them a big round of applause.